Hi folks, welcome to Sunday's edition of the iWrite Radio podcast stroke videocast. I think it's almost unavoidable that we go for Mr. Cummings once again. He's been talked about all over today's Sunday programs on the telly. Gordon Brewer might get a mention from me, certainly, on the Scotch Politics program. But I think we'll start with Grant Snaps on Mar. What do we think, Stuart?
Well, I watched him twice. I watched him on Sophie Ridge. Well, he's hung up there by the rest of the cabinet. Somebody told him to go and do it. He obviously, he drew the short straw, that's for sure. Sophie Ridge had announced last night, Sky had announced last night they'd actually published the list of the questions they were going to ask Grant Shapps this morning so that he would have no excuse if he didn't have these answers. And I've never done that before. So she announced that live while she was interviewing him, and he didn't answer any of the questions. It was the most uncomfortable interview I've ever seen. But I have to admit, I think Mar was much more forceful than Sophie Ridge. Sophie Ridge can be all right, but Mar was really, really good. He pushed and pushed and pushed, and he just made him look and sound like an idiot.
Jimmy?
Waste of space, mate. Waste of space. He'd deliberately not gone and spoken to Boris Johnson and deliberately not spoken to Dominic Cummings, so he didn't have to give any answers. So frankly, it would have been more entertaining if Andrew Marr had ascertained it in 5 minutes and just cut the interview off. It was a total waste of space. And for him to use the caveat, my understanding, at every question, which basically means I can back away from this answer any time I feel like it because I didn't have all the information. Total waste of time.
Well, we can have a wee feel of that, if you like, guys. I'll give you a couple of minutes to give you some idea of the interview. This was put together by the Independent.
Yeah, I have no answer for you because I don't know the answer to the question. Their situation, as I understand it, would have been they have a young child, a 4-year-old. I think that probably, as I understand it, the most important thing here is I also understand, my understanding is it's not true that because he didn't go back up, as I understand it, to Durham, and come on to that separate.
I'm talking about
but my understanding.
So effectively, he used the phrase "my understanding" to get out of everything, because he'll be able to turn around if he was wrong with his answer. When he gave an answer, he'll be able to say, "Oh well, see, I said at the time my understanding. I've since learned that the actual case was."
Well, look, he needed a coach to tell him, because the one thing he didn't do, he didn't behave in any way at all to get any sympathy from the viewer. Do you understand what I mean? You couldn't feel sorry for him watching him.
I think the really noticeable thing is the number of people that they put up between Johnson and Cummings. Snaps is the one we see this morning. But at some point, Boris Johnson is going to have to face the music here. Okay, Cummings is an advisor. You don't expect to see him on the telly. But with the Scottish case, she got up and apologised, which immediately took the sting out of it.
She also stood in front of the press and took questions.
Aye, there's no way Cummings is doing that.
No, Dominic Cummings isn't going to do that. And Boris, let's be honest, with him being on a 2-week break now, I didn't think Boris is going to stand in front of a camera and take questions for anybody until 2.5 weeks have passed and we're back into PMQs.
At the very least. I'm curious to know why the A66 was mentioned, because the A66 runs through Barnard Castle, which was the other place that Dominic Cummings was apparently spotted. I mean, is there something in that?
No, Shapps was actually meant to do yesterday's briefing and announce £1 billion worth of road improvements. So he's been trying to get that into the odd interview now and again, just to point out to people, and probably to point out to his parliamentary colleagues, the only reason I've been handed this shitty stick is because this was meant to be my weekend as Transport Secretary to make announcements on funding that are totally disappeared because of Dominic Cummings.
Yeah, he has become the biggest story of an advisor as I can remember. I mean, it's stunningly. I mean, we've seen this over the years when the advisor becomes the story rather than just giving a message. And what a mess this is. Why are they sticking it out?
I think there's a bigger problem. I think he's running the government. I think they're terrified if he goes, Boris Johnson is going to be shown up to being incompetent.
Well, yeah,
seriously, I think Cummings, it looks more and more like he's the backbone of this government's policy making, at the very least. And I think if he goes, I think it crumbles.
Well, listening to any of the other senior politicians spoken to in the last few days, I think I agree with you there, Nori. More and more. I've always suspected he was running things, and I think it's becoming clearer and clearer and clearer that he was running the government.
But I can't see any other reason. I mean, there's back doors, Jimmy mentioned before we went on air, there's back doors that they can bring him back through.
Yeah, but he'd never have the power that he's got now. I mean, right now, he's cost a Conservative government a Chancellor. They chose him over, what was that horrible wee gadget's name?
Javid.
Sajid Javid, aye. They basically allowed him to manoeuvre Sajid Javid out of number 11. That's how powerful he is. And however, if he goes, he will never, ever be able to run the government in that way again, where he can hold every single spad, every single cabinet minister's afraid of him because he has so much power right now. There's no way they could let him go and then ghost him into any other job where he has that kind of authority.
I don't know.
Interesting stuff. I mean, we all three of us probably agree that he's very powerful. It's become apparent just how powerful he is, because that's why, that explains why it's taking so long for him to go.
Well, between him and Michael Gove's been handed remarkable power in terms of how he's now, or his department, are now effectively running the response to COVID-19. They've got all kinds of power now. He's running how the app's produced. He's running how our data is developed. He's been handed remarkable power, and it does worry that Gove and Cummings are quite so close. As I said off air, I didn't think if Johnson falls, I didn't think Gove could be Prime Minister because I don't think he has the support of the Parliamentary Party. But right now, that's why they're hanging on, this wee gang of three, because Boris doesn't really want to be a full-time Prime Minister. He wants to do a Trump and just get asked various things now and again, and he's not a details man, famously. And right now, it's Cummings and Gove that are running government for him.
It definitely smells that way. The other really interesting thing about this week is, I mean, Cummings has become the scandal, but you've got the Arcuri scandal, police destroying evidence. You've got the note tests falsified and counted twice.
Aye.
Hancock refuses to sort data privacy of the government app. Dominic gives 250 million app development to his brother-in-law. These are all things that would be resigning issues.
They're all things that would be massive, massive stories, and none of it has had any traction over the weekend because of Dominic Cummings.
And that's in 1 week.
Well, I was going to say, is this just a dead cat? No, Dominic Cummings is a story, surely.
It's a dead lion, maybe. It's bigger than a cat. But the point I'm really making is this government's incompetence and corruption is rife. I was sitting yesterday thinking to myself, this Cummings thing, wow, blah, blah. And then I thought, but every day of last week, something broke that would have been a resigning issue a couple of years ago.
Oh yeah.
And there's still a lot that's not broken. We've still not had the Russian report.
Well,
We've still not got a clean look at how they intend to do a trade deal with the United States.
well, that was the other big one from last week. They're going to do the trade deal in secret.
Aye.
Right, now,
Closed doors in a basement, buried under 4 ton of shite.
who is it that is supposedly, you know, the people? There is a couple, the Elliots. Are they brother and sister?
No, they're married.
Oh, they're a married couple. Anyway, I've seemed to have got a story in my inbox from the other day, and these people are really close to the people backing Trump, aren't they? The Koch
they're
brothers, very
They're
close.
They're basically creatures of the American right.
And the address that everybody is short. The address that the shorthand for all these people is Tufton Street, isn't it?
Aye.
Right-wing think tank country.
Well,
yes, the tax research people and all the rest of it.
Elliot bloody set up the Taxpayers Alliance. He was chairman of Vote Leave. He's in it up to his neck, and virtually nobody in the United Kingdom knows who he is because he plays under the radar.
Mm-hmm.
And clearly, as chairman of Vote Leave, Cummings is his creature.
The other aspect of all this is how much it underlines jobs for the boys, the them and us culture that seems to be so prevalent in the Tory party. I mean, we all knew it was there, but Jesus, this is like 10 times as bad as I ever thought.
It occurred to me to ask the question, yes, is it just them and us because they're the elite, or is it also because London and the rest of the country? You know, I mean, over the last 8 weeks, we've watched people piling onto tube trains every bloody day on television, passing virus amongst themselves. I think they live in a different bubble in London.
I do think that the timing, the calendar for coming out of lockdown is driven by London.
Aye, absolutely.
And I think they'll be a bit upset that they've lost control of both English regions, Wales, Northern Ireland, and Scotland. And I do expect to see the Treasury becoming the tool that's used to force the regions and the devolved nations back into line.
Now, don't forget, 50 councils have already said they're not opening the schools, English councils, 50.
Well,
I wonder if does it suit us? Does it suit Scotland for Dominic Cummings to stay in place?
Well, there's a very good point, isn't it? That was almost the same question I was going to ask Jimmy. What do we want this government to fall, and what happens if it does?
It depends on what use the Scottish government, the SNP, make of the mayhem that'll bring about. One of the reasons I'd like to see Cummings go, I mean, he might be a hateful, lying, two-faced, backstabbing piece of, but he's competent. He's a lot more competent than's there. If Cummings goes, it opens the door, I think, to less able people being in charge.
Well, and that's the question I want to ask right now with this emergency. They've made such a mess of it already, of this coronavirus emergency. I mean, I've got friends and relatives all over these islands. I'm worried. An incompetent government in charge. We're the worst in the world now.
I don't think you need to worry any more than you should be now, because it's going to be the same government. They're not going to get more competent about this. This is no longer a question of the spread of the virus. This is now a question of saving Tory party donors' businesses. And it wouldn't matter who was in the Tory government in charge. That is first and foremost in their minds now.
Yeah, but I'm somewhere deep inside, of course, I want this government to fall and fail, but God, you know, the consequences for people, friends, relatives across these islands could be devastating.
Guys, some of the stuff that's going on, some of the stuff that's going to happen in the next few weeks, and we're just getting a sniff of that with the likes of BA sending redundancy notices to their entire staff. And apparently their plan is to employ about 15,000 less staff in the UK, but they'll be employed on contracts way, way worse than what the staff have at the moment. And if BA are planning that, they're not the only one. Big business sees this as a massive opportunity to transfer more wealth from us to them.
Well,
And if that's going to be the case, this could turn into a disastrous couple of years for the entire planet, but certainly for this country, because we have the most incompetent bunch of idiots on the planet, and the big businesses will be able to do what they want, and the government will just say, aye, okay, because they're getting a bung for it.
well, I think there's not been a lot of talk about the right winning the argument about changing the way society looks. And all we've heard is the left, the more progressive ideas. And
We've been
you're right.
thinking that the new normal would suit us, and the new normal certainly doesn't look like it's going to suit us at all.
And we've got a government that is not progressive. So why would they support progressive moves when they can basically gut the country? They've got the excuse they need. They've got two excuses.
Mm-hmm.
They've got the epidemic, or the pandemic rather, and they've got Brexit.
Aye, which will be worse.
I saw a headline this morning. Apparently, what's her name? The president now of the European Union,
Ursula von der Leyen.
I saw a headline saying that the EU are giving up, and they're expecting just a no deal.
Aye, they are, mate. But the EU are also, as much as I feel Scotland should have a relationship with the EU, I'm not so sure full membership's that great either, because the EU are quite happy, like any government, and they act like a government, don't they, to bend the rules when it suits them. That's KLM just announced today. They will be giving no refunds, which absolutely breaks all European laws, but KLM didn't care. They've had their money for the Dutch government, they got a bung for the French government and all, so now they're happy to break European Union rules.
They're giving no
refunds to people who have lost their flights. And that's like, I mean, that's kind of rule number one for operating as an airline within the European Union. If they bust it, every carrier will do the same, mate. Eh?
They will. Everybody will turn around and do exactly that.
Mm-hmm.
So it will be the plebs, the poor people will be subsidising big business, just like in 2008.
Aye, they'll send you a voucher for a flight that you didn't particularly want, but most people will just take the voucher because it'll be either that or not.
And one thing yesterday that just pricked my brain every time it came up, one or two of these Tories being interviewed, etc., is the assumption. In fact, I picked some out this morning from Grant Shapps. Let me just, if I can find it quick, we'll use it. It was basically, he said something that assumed that the crisis was practically over.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's how they're trying to play it, mate.
They're pretending it's practically over, whereas there's a very good chance we're going to have a second wave.
Well, I mean, my point earlier about this is now no longer about the pandemic. This is now about saving their rich friend businesses. It's not about saving the economy.
It's not about saving lives either.
They'll gut the working class. They're quite happy to do that. They've done it before, so why won't they do it again? This is about saving big business. And they need the plebs to get back to work so they can make money for the rich people. Because when you go back to work, again, it comes back to whether you take a right-wing solution to the way society looks or not. You go back to work on a 0 hours contract.
Well, I think referring to the British Airways story, I saw someone in Scotland saying that she'd been with British Airways 35 years. She was offered her job back at half the salary.
Yeah, you're looking. Some of them are looking at almost 65% pay cuts in some of the areas, but most of them are looking at about half of what they were on previously, which is just scandalous. What makes that worse is that BA and BA's parent company have been making billions of pounds of profit for years, and it's all been handed out in dividends. They've not got any. They've probably got a decent cash reserve in the bank, but they have no intention of using their cash reserves to help their staff in any way, shape or form. Their cash reserves
But
are for next year's divvy.
How do they think? If they're prepared to do that, if they're prepared to cut wages, say on average by 40%, why shouldn't every other business do that? And then who can afford flights?
Mm-hmm. Who can afford flights? Who wants to get in a plane?
Who can afford flying in Kelly?
I know I've got a big family in the south of England, and I've not seen them since last autumn, September, I think it was. Now, I already spoke to them. I'm hoping I can go down in maybe August. We might be looking at the Scottish phases of the easing the lockdown. But I'll be driving down. There's no way I'm not getting on a plane to go down. Can't afford a train anyway.
I'll be honest with you, mate. I think anybody that wants to jump on a plane right now with the virus still prevalent throughout Europe and throughout the rest of the world is a bit of a mug. But folk are going to jump on planes. They're going to use masks. I've seen the boy for Ryanair saying yesterday that the idea of quarantine is ludicrous. I have some sympathy with that. I'm not really sure why we would bring in a 14-day quarantine this late into a pandemic. It seems bloody stupid unless they're expecting this second wave. But I think BT's actions would indicate that they expect a lot of these
BA
carriers, BA's attitude. They're expecting a lot of airlines to go under, and that the big boys like them will be able to siphon up, take all their routes. So if you're going to fly, you're going to have far less options to fly.
I mean, if that's the way it goes, Stuart, get your ladder out, because I'll be on the barricades. I mean, if it goes right wing from here, I think there'll be a serious backlash. I think,
well, Norrie, if it goes even close, if BA get close to doing what they're planning to do, Scotland has to vote for independence. We can't be tied to an extreme right-wing English government that allows business to absolutely shaft thousands of staff members and thousands of staff. I mean, BA probably got some of the longest, most loyal staff. It's kind of the top company to work for in the UK if you're in that industry. So
BA have
loyal staff that have been with them for years, and they're going to absolutely pump the lot of them.
BA have formally mistreating their staff.
Well, they've been trying to get away with this contract for a long time. Mind that I didn't know if he's still there. Freddie, whatever his name is, the wee gimp that was running them for long enough.
Yeah. Which, talking about Scotland, brings us neatly on to Gordon Brewer this morning.
Oh, yeah.
I'll tell you what, his question was, small businesses are confused, blah, blah, blah. I bet you they were more confused by the time he'd finished interrupting and talking shite.
He interrupted with so many times. It's a world record.
That's what he was there to do. He was there not to allow Fiona Hislop to be clear on anything. He was there to sow confusion. That's why he asked the question, and that's why he treated her the way that he did.
Even when she gave yes and no answers. Yeah. She gave definitive yes and no answers, like, no, small businesses should not be open now unless...
I think I've
never known an interview to shed less light on the subject it was about in my life.
It was like a couple of kids in the playground. She was trying to explain, and she's going, yeah, it's not clear. Yes, it is. No, it's no. It was ludicrous.
Oh, absolutely. It's one of the worst interviews I've ever seen. Gordon Brewer, bottom of the class. In fact, go and stand in the corridor.
I think BBC Scotland...
One day I'm going to stop watching.
Yeah, I think BBC
find out whether he actually talks more than his guests. Because I always come away thinking, well, that was the Gordon Brewer show.
Well, he's on again this afternoon.
Oh, good.
Because we've got 2:30 Scottish presser. It might be interesting to see if there's any mention of Dominic Cummings. I wouldn't be surprised.
Well, BBC Scotland should be embarrassed by that. I mean, that was shocking. And then we got some pish. And I'm sorry, but that's all you could call it. Some nonsense puff piece about the wedding industry.
That's what I thought too.
Sorry, the country's falling apart. The chief advisor to the Prime Minister, and they can't, and they're putting that stuff out. What they should have been doing is phoning every Tory in Scotland until they could find one that would show their face on camera, because they're all in hiding now. I'll tell you what, if B&Q and Comet are open now, they'll be selling shitloads of fridges because clearly that's the fashionable thing to hide in at the moment.
They should have had a fridge sitting next to Gordon with a big sticker on it. Couldn't he get a Tory to comment?
I thought Fiona Hislop was very, very good. I mean, she didn't trip. Not once did she trip. But Gordon was just what a fool he made himself. Absolute clown this morning.
Well, if the point of the interview was to clarify things, I have to say he was very professional in failing miserably.
Yeah, I genuinely think the point
Hislop's fault. It was his fault.
I genuinely think the point of that was to call into question the route map, whatever you want to call it, because BBC have decided their line is that the Scottish government are basically doing the same as the English government are doing, but 2 or 3 weeks behind. Now that couldn't be further from the truth if they tried. I mean, I'm sorry, but if anybody's taking a look at the route map, there's not specific dates because they can't give you specific dates, but there's specific times when everybody is going to get. I mean, it's clear. If you have a restaurant, you can open in phase 2, the outdoor part. In phase 3, they hope to have come up with a social distancing way so that you can open your indoor part. That's much clearer than anything that's come out of London at the moment.
I actually think London's plan is to hack people off so much they just do what they want, and then they can wash their hands of it. We've said this before. They can wash their hands of any negative effects by saying, "Oh, it's the public's own fault."
We've said for long enough they're going to blame the people.
Yeah,
that's clear that they're going to blame us for what happens to us because
scientists,
all these shocking decisions that they took in the past, all these terrible decisions. Was it the Times that kind of got lost in all the thing this morning? But the Times had another big investigation and basically ran a piece this morning that said that the UK government basically added 1 million infections to the effect of this virus by their mishandling of it. And that's got completely lost in all the Dominic Cummings stuff.
Yeah, I mean, in some ways, the Dominic Cummings thing has been a bit of a lifesaver.
It occurred to me about 10 minutes ago in this discussion that there have actually, we could do with drawing up a list of the scandals that vanished under the bigger scandals that are going on. I mean, the corruption of this government is unbelievable. We would never have believed that it could get this bad in my lifetime.
Well, that's Tories for you, mate. I'm sorry, but we're looking at the most. That's the worry. We're looking at the most talentless but vicious Conservative party we've ever seen. I mean, somebody like Michael Gove stab you in the front and take your wallet and then tell you he was doing you a favour because you're too ill-educated to survive in this world the way it is now. And by the way, he's nowhere near the worst of them.
Well, look, can I just point out that don't forget they're subsidising the failing, foul press that does you know, the disgusting press that doesn't pay any taxes. They're answerable to nobody, and they're actually getting a subsidy off the government. So is the Scottish government. There's a good point. We'll need to have a go at that.
I'm sorry, by the way, Jimmy, you're wrong about the talentless Tories. Some of them do have talent. Tobias Ellwood, MP. Remember the guy? He was the guy that jumped in to try and save the policeman that got shot. House Commons ex-SAS, I think he is. Has just been promoted to Lieutenant Colonel as a reservist in the 77
Brigade. Oh, right. So he's another spy.
So he's an MP spook.
No, let's be honest. 77th Brigade will now give anybody that was in the army or the reserves a job these days because 77 are basically, they're desperate for people to go on Twitter and Facebook, run a few fake accounts and try and influence opinion. But if he's been promoted to Lieutenant Colonel, then Barry, his missus will get to run a wee bot farm out the back window or something, and they'll get a couple of grand a week for that.
Well, Toby Ellwood is also the guy that appears on Newsnight. He's the MP that seems to be the go-to Tory MP for Newsnight these days.
Well, he's the only one that'll go on it because nobody that has a job in government is allowed to go on it, eh?
His wife doesn't work on Newsnight, does she?
No, but there's every chance that his missus is pals with Lewis Goodall or something, mate, because that seems to be the issue with the Tories. They didn't want to go near Newsnight ever since Lewis Goodall got the job there.
Yeah, well, the BBC is absolutely riddled with spooks.
I'll tell you what, it's been interesting in how quiet the BBC's. I think the BBC's lines changed there. I think they may expect Dominic Cummings to go. Just at 1 o'clock there, I was watching a newsreader interview one of their correspondents, and their lines definitely changed. It's certainly not the defend Dominic at all costs nonsense that they were coming out with yesterday, which I kind of got the impression it was more defend Laura Kuenssberg at all costs, and Dominic gets helped out because he's their source.
Well, she's. I think she's got to go. I mean, I'm not. I think she probably will go because she's become the story herself.
Yes. Kuenssberg.
She became the story yesterday.
I'm sorry. People have got a problem with Laura Kuenssberg, but I follow her and I've read all her tweets on Friday and Saturday, everything she put up, and she was even-handed. It was just the stuff she was saying against Cummings, or the story, the support she was pointing out for the story was just being ignored by Twitter.
She jumped into, is it Pippa Creerer's story, and tried to diminish that story as it was being published. She tried to rubbish it for the government as it was being published.
2 minutes after that.
The actions of a journalist, mate. A journalist don't shit on other journalists.
I'm sorry, Jimmy. 2 minutes after that, she came out in support of it.
Well, I'm sorry, I'm with Jimmy on that one. And she became the story.
Right. Did you read all her tweets?
No, I didn't read all her tweets because I didn't like her.
Did you read all her tweets, Stuart?
I don't know. Look, she became...
I did. I read them all. And I'm sorry, she had as many...
Calm down.
Oh, won't calm down. With opinions you can't back up with what she actually published.
Well, she's two-faced. What you're saying is she's two-faced. She tried to shit on the story and then she supported the story, and that makes it okay.
Jimmy, she did exactly the same thing with every tweet. A source close to has said, pro and anti. Now, I'm no big fan of Kuenssberg. I happen to think she's right-wing and quite likely to be a Tory. But on the Cummings thing, the only thing people talked about on Twitter was her support, supposedly, of Cummings. And they ignored every tweet she had that actually backed the story up.
Norrie, it doesn't matter what she done after the fact. Her first choice was to come out and try and spike Creerer's story.
Okay.
That was what she done after that is after the fact. That's protecting Laura Kuenssberg. But she tried to spike that story. And she tried to spike that story for the government.
Jimmy, she's tweeted the same way for years. She gets her first comment. The other one was the guy that was supposedly attacked. Do you remember that one? Where some Tory minister claimed to have been attacked by a Labour activist. And she tweeted because she saw the video that was put up by the SPAD that was with a Tory. She tweeted that, and within 30 seconds, had got information contrary to that, and she tweeted out, it now looks like that this was a set-up job.
Within 30 seconds, that just makes her a hell of a good MI6 operative. She's got a tweet and she's got one ready to
all she does is, as far as I can see, is tweet what her sources tell her when they tell her.
Hence the reason I didn't follow. I've never used until recently Twitter, because I think it's awfully handy for somebody like Laura Kuenssberg to be able to, as I say, shit on another journalist and then put out stuff a wee bit later just to make it look like she's no shitting on another journalist, because she definitely tried news management of that story.
I don't agree with you.
But it was way too big to news manage. What was even better is Laura's disappeared today and disappeared yesterday when it turned out that Creerer and the Mirror had more information and were letting the Tories hang themselves, hoist by their own petard, all come out defending Dominic, and then they got the second kicking last night at about 8 o'clock.
Well,
They had very little to say, including Andrew Neil, including Laura Kuenssberg.
Well, he's disappeared, that's for sure.
You've got to remember when this
She
Cummings
doesn't,
story,
she doesn't put on her days off.
when this Cummings story first broke on Friday, what was trending on Twitter higher than Dominic Cummings? Laura Kuenssberg. She became the story.
Yeah, and okay, argue that she shouldn't tweet. By all means. But if you're going to criticize her, guys, look at all her tweets, not just the ones that you hate. That's my point.
But
plenty
Rory,
she says I disagree with.
You can't say that. Most people in this country don't even fucking use Twitter.
Yeah.
If you're going to criticise her, look at how one-sided her pieces are on BBC News at 6 and on News at 10 when people are watching her. When she's got most influence, she is always on the side of the Tories, and she is, frankly, she's quite an extreme right-winger at times.
Well, I'm not particularly disagreeing with you. I'm saying the pile-on on Friday and Saturday was biased, as simple as that.
I think she opened herself up for it, mate, because she, as the story was breaking, she became as big as the story because she had to be in there first, and she had to defend the government. Why does she feel she has to defend the government?
What she tweeted was a
source
source close to the government said.
And everybody and his brother thinks her source is Dominic Cummings or Boris himself. Right,
and everybody thinks that's her opinion. What she's doing is quoting a source.
She carries the government line. She's too close to Boris and she's too close to Dominic.
What if she'd said, a source close to me tells me it's all true, and in fact he'd been up there twice, not once?
I'd still be concerned that her source was either Dominic Cummings or Boris Johnson. That's my worry now, mate. The BBC political editor is in the pocket of the people at the top of the Conservative Party. And you're forgetting Twitter. John Cole was never in anybody's pocket. Nick Robinson was the first BBC political editor that you could actually say had somebody's hand up his farter and that he was being worked for the Conservative Central Office. Worse.
I'm not actually disagreeing with you about where our politics appear to lie or where the BBC's politics appear to lie. I'm talking about this particular incident. And I'm sorry, every quote she made that was fronted by the words, "a source has told me," said as much against Cummings as said for. Had she tweeted it the other way round, the right wing would have been shouting and screaming at her because she's too much of a lefty.
Aye, but our fellow journalists are less than impressed with what she done, mate.
As I say, Twitter's maybe not the best place for her to enact her.
I think it's a bit of a minefield for politicians, for journalists, but then it does give them very, very quick reactions to what's going on, and that's what, particularly if they're working for BBC or Sky, they want a reaction as quick as possible so they can gauge that reaction, and then maybe, particularly with the Beeb, they take the reactions for the first 5 minutes and then they use that to shape their narrative.
Well, I tend to keep my powder dry with Kuenssberg because a couple of times now, in fact, I think 3 times that I can think of, including this particular one, she's tweeted something out and then come back and tweeted something else out that had a fuller piece of the story. But she's never not tweeted the full story, if you understand what I mean. As the story built and the information got added to, she's quite happy to tweet out that as well.
Well, hopefully she'll just keep on working in London. The disaster for me is next year when she comes up to Scotland and tries to act like she kens what's going on up here. But I wonder if a Tory will show face today, a Scottish Tory will appear today. I noticed that Jackson Carlow's column is the only thing that Ruth Davidson's tweeted in about 40 hours.
I can't see them until this is settled, or the next big SNP bad story comes along. You won't see them. If he resigns, you'll see them, and the line will be, "Oh, he did the honourable thing." If he gets fired, the line will be Johnson showing leadership. If nothing happens, you won't see anything.
Well, he's still in his job now, mate. I've got Sky News running in the background there. I was just checking. Nothing's happened in Downing Street whilst we've been doing this.
Yeah, I've just been checking the timeline on Twitter. There's one guy that I follow on Twitter, Tom London. I don't know much about him, but he's over there. What he said today was Cummings will go soon, Johnson will go sometime soonish. I fear then it will be Gove as PM, and then, following the example first set by Blair and Alistair Campbell with Mandelson, Cummings will duly return after a short while. What do you think about that?
Nah.
Seems possible.
If there's any truth to the rumours that his input is that important, he'll come back somehow.
That's why I didn't think he'll go, mate. I think they'll try and find. I might be wrong, but I think they're desperately trying to find a way for him to survive this. But there can't be any more to come out. Yesterday, they've all came out in support of him, and effectively, his bending of the rules. Let's be polite to him. He bent the rules. He's danced on the head of a pin when it comes to how the rules are applied. And then he's got no support from the cabinet this morning because there was more to come out. If there's anything else to come out, he goes.
Here's an idea. Is he more important than any minister?
At the moment, he is.
Right. Is there a possibility that they throw a minister to the wolves, basically to save him?
We've kind of been waiting for Matt Hancock to get shafted for a couple of weeks now, eh?
Well, that's what I was thinking. Is there?
I think Tom London's closer to the future. I think that they'll have to let him go, but he'll be back.
I can't see Gove getting the PM's job.
And the other thing, mate,
Boris getting the PM's job.
The other thing, Stuart, is the Tories tend to let politicians go and bring them back. But if you let a senior advisor go, they're done. Because they're going to go and they've got one opportunity to make money at that point, and that's to do a couple of interviews and get a book deal.
Well, of course, there is the other well-trodden path of the reason why senior people don't go. He knows where all the bodies are buried.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there was a tweet out recently saying that Boris had an unfortunate incident with his wife, and that she would go public with that if he got hammered. I won't say what the incident. Won't say what the incident was because obviously I don't know if it's true.
Now, let's be honest. Boris has had an unfortunate incident with a hell of a lot of women over the years, hasn't he?
Well, it would appear so.
Given, that bird of his now must be sitting there thinking, hold it. He's got a couple of females in the cabinet. I need to be going to cabinet meetings to make sure he's not playing footsie under the table.
Can I ask, remember earlier this week there was a graphic put out, apparently by Number 10, because they needed to explain to the dumbasses that don't understand the metric system what 2 meters is. Mm-hmm. So they had up a graphic, and it had the weird thing was they had a bed. Apparently, it was the length of a bed, and then they also had 3 fridges. And it was like somebody was putting these up as code because these are both scandals that refer to Boris Johnson.
I think it was 1 bed, 3 fridges, and 4 chairs. So I don't know what he's been doing to chairs.
I have no idea.
Maybe that's something for his pasta eating involving chairs and biscuits and.
Yeah, but that was when you look back at it now, it was bizarre that if the Number 10 put that graphic out, it must have been code for something.
No, it's just nae thought.
Okay, I've given.
Right, guys, that's 40 minutes. So.
Oh, we better go.
Yeah, we'll call it a day at that, I think. Thanks for listening, folks. Thanks for being here, Stuart. Thanks, Jimmy. I'm Mary Stuart.
Cheerio.
No doubt catch you tomorrow when, who knows, maybe we'll be wearing party hats and have balloons out. Can't think why. Cheers for that, folks.